I will start my reading from the book Magic Words. In fact, linguistic concreteness even affects parole board decisions. When prisoners apologize for their actions, those who give more concrete explanations for their transgressions are more likely to be granted parole. Make the abstract concrete. Given all the benefits of concrete language, one question is why we don't use it more often. After all, if concrete language makes things easier to understand, remember, and feel positively toward, why would anyone ever speak or write abstractly? Whenever we express an idea, we tend to know a lot about the thing we are talking about. Salespeople know all the benefits of their product or service. Teachers are experts on the material they are teaching, and managers have spent months thinking through the details of a new strategic initiatives. In some ways, this knowledge is a blessing. By knowing the ins and outs of a product or service, we can zero in on the best selling points for a particular potential client. Through being versed in a particular subject, we can bring in related ideas to help students comprehend the topic. And by spending time thinking through a new initiative, we often know exactly what is needed to help make the implementation successful. But while knowledge can sometimes be a blessing, it can also be a curse because once people know a lot about something, it can be difficult for them to remember what it's like not to know that much, to imagine what it's like not having that depth of understanding. When estimating what others know or don't know, people often use their own knowledge as a starting point. They assume that others know just as much as them. When talking to their colleagues about a new initiative, for example, managers usually use their own level of comprehension as an anchor. All the nonsense of digital transformation are pretty easy for me to understand, so others must be having the same experience and it's easy for them to understand as well. As a result, we often communicate using acronyms, shorthand, and other lingo, words, phrases, or language that other experts should be able to understand. But what we forget is that while it's easy for us to parse, others may not feel the same way. While we have spent lots of time thinking about something or know a lot about it, we often fail to account for the fact that others may not be in same position. Consequently, we often talk in ways that fly right over their heads. Think about the last time you spoke to a financial advisor, for example, or went to a mechanic. They might have talked about how a particular investment was not a true cold capital, or talked about how the drive shaft is rated for the stock horsepower and torque, but the vehicle is currently pumping out a lot more power than stock. Things that were clearly second nature for them but left us wondering if they were speaking a second language. This curse has a name, and appropriately it is called the curse of knowledge. It's a curse because the more we know, the more we assume others know, and thus the more we end up communicating in ways that are tough to understand. And abstractness is the cause. The more people learn more about something, the more they naturally start to think about it abstractly. Finding solutions to problems becomes ideation. Determining why someone should buy from you becomes identifying a value proposition, and Tyler, Maria Derek, and hundreds of other new employees become human capital. Mission statements, marketing plans, and culture documents are awash with such language. But this is not just a business problem. The same is true of almost any specialty. Mechanics speak mechanic lingo, teachers speak teacher lingo, and financial advisors speak financial advisor lingo. Even great doctors are often terrible communicators. They may understand the problem, but they use such abstract language to explain it that the solution is completely unintelligible. Example: talking about lifestyle modifications rather than exercising more often. We need to make the abstract concrete. Whether talking to colleagues or clients, students or sales reps, patients or program managers, we need to take abstract ideas and make them real by using concrete language, helping people understand and act on why we are saying. Some words less concrete and more concrete. Jeans for pants, money back for refund, table for furniture, t-shirt for that, mouth watering for really, warmly for nicely, walk for go, fix for solve. It's easier to understand what someone is saying when they talk about a phone rather than a device. Describe, Describing a car as sporty red or a roadster should make it more vivid, and rather than saying we will go to the back of the store to look for a larger size, using more imaginable and specific language, example walk, will help convince consumers we are going to do our best to address their issue. Below are some more examples of more and less concrete language and check out to measure concreteness in any text. Know when it's better to be abstract. So far, we have talked about why concrete language is beneficial. It signals listening, makes things easier to comprehend, and can even help generate more effective apologies. But is concrete language always good? Or might there be some situations in which abstract language is better? Everywhere you turn, there is another startup with a huge valuation. In 2007, Brian Chesky and Joey Gebbia couldn't afford the rent on their San Francisco apartment. So they rented our air mattresses on their living room floor to people coming to the city for a big design conference. Now their company Airbnb is worth more than $100 billion. Two friends were complaining about how tough it was to find a cab. So they turned that insight into the ride hailing app Uber, worth close to the same amount. Dropbox, DoorDash, Stitch Fix, ClassPass, Robinhood, Warby Parker, Grammarly, Instacart, and Allbirds are only a handful of the hundreds of unicorn startups worth over $1 billion. But before a startup can become a unicorn, one of the first things entrepreneurs have to do is to raise money. Beyond having an idea, they have to convince early stage investors to chip in funds so that they can begin to build a business. And raising money is tough. Famed technology startup accelerator Y Combinator receives applications from more than 20,000 startups a year and funds fewer than a couple hundred. Most venture capital funds support even fewer. Founders create pitch decks, draft presentations, and submit applications for funding. But what makes some pitches more successful than others? Why do some garner support when so many others fail? In 2020, a Harvard Business School professor and her colleague analyzed a year's worth of funding requests. A venture capital firm was looking to take an equity stake in early stage companies interested in scaling, fledgling businesses who were poised for long term growth. The firm was willing to invest up to $2 million in each startup initially, with the possibility of increasing to 5 million to $10 million in subsequent funding rounds. Not surprisingly, the firm received a lot of applications, more than 1,000 from companies focused on everything from technology and finance to medicine and B2B services. In addition to providing information about their company and its founding team, applicants also provided an executive summary of the business. The pitch by a company building a wearable device to track blood alcohol content, for example, said, most social drinkers can identify with the experience of waking up after a night out and wishing they had had at least one less drink. They may have a hangover, have blown their diet, or may not remember aspects of the night, but they are not addicted. They don't want to quit drinking, but they wish they had the tools to find the line between enjoying drinking and waking up not feeling good. We give users those tools. The pitch of a financial technology company focused on equipment leasing said, our goal is to develop a fast solution for small and mid-sized companies to address the coming changes in accounting for lease expected to occur over the next 4 to 5 years. Current lease accounting rules were developed over 30 years ago and enabled lessees to take most of their leases off balance sheet. These rules have been criticized for many years because they don't reflect the true financial position of companies. A recent exposure draft from the accounting standards bodies addresses this by requiring lessees to capitalize their leases. In other words, bring them on the balance sheet. Investors read through the pitches and sorted out what to do. They decide whether each startup had growth potential, was highly scalable, and determined whether or not to consider the firm for potential funding. To understand what drove funding decisions, the researchers examined a variety of factors. They measured what industry each startup was in, whether in targeted business or consumers, whether it offered a product or service, and the size of the founding team. Not surprisingly, aspects of the business itself played an important role. Some industries were seen as having high growth potential, while others not as much. Similarly, what the startups were offering mattered as well. Compared to services, products were seen as easier to scale. Beyond the company itself, though, and the business area it focused on, the researchers also analyzed the pitches, what applicants said, and how they said it. One might expect that pitch language should not matter much. After all, the success of an investment depends a lot more on what business the company is in on or whether they have a strong leadership team. But even controlling for those factors, pitch language had a strong impact on investment decisions. Pitches that used more abstract language made investors think the company had more potential for growth and greater ability to scale. Abstract language also boosted the likelihood of investment, increasing the chance startups made it through the initial round of consideration for funding. In some ways, this is pretty surprising. After all, venture capitalists are seasoned veterans who have invested tens of millions of dollars in dozens of startups. They have seen businesses go public for billions and they have seen ideas fall apart in a matter of months. So, the fact that something as simple as the language founders used shaped decision making is striking. But even more surprising is the type of language that increased investment. After all, concrete language increases understanding, boosts memorability, and has a host of other benefits. So, given all that, why did less concrete, more abstract language increases funding? The answer, it turns out, has to do with what concrete language communicates about potential. As we have discussed, concrete language often relates to observable aspects of items, actions, and events, things that exist in the here and now that we can see, touch, or feel. Consequently, concrete language is often quite helpful. It can help people visualize what is being said and understand complex topics. In the context of pitch language, for example, using concrete language should help potential investors understand what a company does and the immediate problems that it hopes to solve. But when deciding whether to fund a startup, understanding is not the main thing investors are looking for. They are not just trying to comprehend a business, they are trying to forecast its potential. Not just whether it will survive, but whether or not it will flourish. How likely is this business to grow in the future? Not just a little, but a lot. How easy will it be to scale up? Thank you. That's it for the day.